Hello, Hancock Church. I am deeply honored and very excited that the discernment team voted unanimously to recommend that I be the next senior minister of our beloved Hancock Church. I have now been here for just over 5 years, and in that time, my love for you has only grown. In this time, these 5 years, we have celebrated many things. We have celebrated 150 years of being Hancock. We created Hancock Next and went through the mission, vision, and values process together. We've done things like launched the Herculean effort, Lexington Unites for Puerto Rico. We've joined and assumed leadership in the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. We've enjoyed unprecedented growth in our ministry to children and families and celebrated so many joys with one another. And as I stand here in the Memorial Garden, I'm also mindful of the saints that we've walked with into their final days and honored their lives and the gifts that they have given to us, their church. I know that there is a lot ahead of us. As happy as we are for Paul and for his retirement, it is also a big loss, as it always is when a senior minister leaves. There will inevitably be grief over the close of one chapter, regardless of how hopeful we may feel about the next one. And we're still in the midst of a pandemic, in a tumultuous election year, in a time of historical social movements that are changing and will continue to change the landscape. Regardless of what happens with the discernment process, it's important for you to know and to face, as a congregation, to face squarely the reality of the unprecedented times that we're living in. In light of that, I think it's also important for you to know that my sense of call to be a senior minister didn't come about just because Paul was retiring. I've been clear for some time that I feel ready to be in senior leadership of a congregation. I've known in my heart and in my bones that I'm ready to be the one that holds the heart of a church. Paul and I have been open about this since our very first conversation, the very first time I interviewed for my current position, almost 6 years ago now. Paul convinced me then, and of course he was right, that being second minister here would be the best preparation that I could get to be a senior minister, whether here or elsewhere in the future, even more so over a solo pastorship. And he was, of course, right. And from the beginning, we've been working together in a collegial way so that I could have the experiences that I needed to, whether here or elsewhere, to step into senior ministry. Over these years, though, my love for Hancock has only grown. And increasingly, I've been clear that I feel called to serve here, and I've turned down other opportunities for senior leadership elsewhere. When push came to shove, my love for Hancock, my sense of call to Hancock, outweighed far all those other opportunities. I love working with such a passionate, smart, faithful, curious, dedicated, entrepreneurial group as you all are. I love being challenged by you. I love learning from you. I love the traditions that we have: Manger Sunday, Hancock Grills, Jazz Epiphany, retreats, HYG, and so many more. I love how you love to learn, how you're unafraid to ask really hard questions, how you listen and engage with our faith, with one another, and with the world. And at the end of the day, I love you as individuals and as a body of Christ. I believe that Hancock Church is, and even more so in the near future, will be a leader in the new landscape that the church will be. Church with a capital C. I'll say more about that in a minute. One of the larger things that I was tasked with over the last 5 years was creating and carrying out the mission, vision, and values process that we went through as a congregation. Though Paul was, of course, involved, he asked that I would oversee the process, which I was more than happy to do. This was a chance to put my knowledge of strategic and adaptive leadership into practice, and it was a deep joy to work with you all in this. The vision, mission, and values that we adopted are now the compass that we use to do just about everything that we do as a church. I see this as only continuing, and even more so, until the day comes when we say, we have come so far, it's time to revision again. Another big piece of my job the last 5 years, because it was written into my job description, was to increase the presence of our public witness for justice in the community and beyond. Now that's why a significant portion of my time and energy have gone into efforts that helped us to connect with the justice work being done in large-scale ways throughout the greater Boston area. Now, while we as a church for many years have been advocates of justice, we have become even more so with our increased visible actions to work more broadly for greater systemic change that reflects our understanding of what it means to be salt and light in the world, what it means to be the church that God is calling us to be today. Powerful leadership has emerged from the congregation over this time, which is, of course, no surprise, and the breadth of work that Hancock is doing as a whole in regards to justice is deeply inspiring. While I've always had a heart for justice, and I always will, I also have a heart for caring for the congregation that is here. In fact, one of the threads of my own sense of call throughout my life, regardless of what my job has been that of people making. Jesus talked about being fishers of people. And one of the ways that I translate that is this, that I believe deeply that part of the role of the church is to fan into flame the God spark that we each have, and to help each other in the process of becoming all that we are created to be as individuals and as a community. My theology of ministry, boiled down, is that we love each other into being. This is needed as a balance to all the doing that we do, and Hancock loves to do. Now, we love each other into being in a multitude of ways, but specifically by cherishing one another and by walking our spiritual paths together. Now, I have specific plans for how we address the care needs of our congregation, and I will be very happy to share those with you. But I do know that we need an intentional system in place, not just now in the times of COVID, but afterwards as well, so that the most vulnerable among us are always brought into the fold, and that they know that they have a person who is a touchstone for them within the congregation. I am also passionate about spiritual development and faith formation. Here at Hancock, we have something so rare it is almost like a unicorn. We have a very strong ministry to families and children and youth that is grounded in progressive Christianity. I can tell you, it is not easy to find good, quality, progressive faith formation programs for kids and youth. It's easy to find large and high-quality, non-progressive faith programs. It's easy to find mediocre and dwindling progressive faith formation programs. But what Hancock has nurtured and built over a long period of time in regard to ministries for kids and youth is unique. David and Jenna, with all of their amazing gifts and graces, have continued to build on these strong foundations, and this is no doubt a priority for us as a community. These ministries are one of the things that set us apart. These ministries draw people to us, and that deepens our impact on the world that we are trying to change. And rest assured that my commitment to our student minister program is as strong as ever. There are tentative plans with Andover Newton in place as to what the program will look like through the remainder of COVID and into the near future. I can speak more about that as well, but suffice it to say that helping to form future ministers is a source of deep joy and personal meaning for me. In fact, it's one of the main reasons the second minister position caught my eye all those years ago. I mentioned earlier that I believe Hancock is poised to be a leader in the larger church, of course now, but especially on the other side of the pandemic. So let's talk a bit about the reality of COVID in the church with a capital C as a whole. Right now, it is expected that by the end of COVID, the end being when there is a vaccine and enough of us have had it and that most things are open again, whenever that is, that by then, that 1 out of 5 to 3 out of 5 churches will have closed. Right now, only about 58% of pastors feel confident that their church will survive until the end of the pandemic. COVID's effect on the church universal has been described as a mini ice age. Now, in some ways, this is unsettling, no doubt. And in others, it's an opportunity for the Spirit to continue to usher in the next thing. Now we, church leader types, have known for some time that something new is coming, that something is ending and something is coming. But COVID is an accelerator. So things that people or organizations or businesses would have put off for another 10 years, they are now doing, whether that's working remotely, finding ways to reduce overhead, or creating virtual meaningful worship experiences, and so on. So the same is true for the church as a whole. COVID is an accelerator. We've known for a while that churches will at some point need to merge and that some will need to close. This has already happened in our community. Some of you have come to us from churches that have closed, so you know that very well. But listen to me. It is very doubtful that Hancock will be one of those. We are solid financially, and more important, we have an alive, engaged, and committed congregation that, along with your staff, are helping to lead us through this. We're also in a position that on the other side of this, we could very likely be one of the churches that other churches would come to or look to become part of a new configuration. For some time, we've recognized that we're no longer just a town church, but that we are in fact now a regional church. More than 25% of our membership currently live outside of Lexington, and that number is only growing. In the near future, at some point, there will be one, at most two, larger regional progressive churches serving a larger region. Now, our TV studio, our increasing proficiency with virtual options for worship, and the deep talents of all of our staff, but especially our music ministry, Mark and Marilyn, who create varied and meaningful musical experiences that enhance our worship, and of course, all of our amazing lay leaders. All of this situates us in a position to be a leader in what the church with a capital C will grow into. This is a time for the church like no other time in our lifetimes. This is a unique opportunity for us to even further live out our mission, vision, and values in broader and bolder ways. Now, I understand that there is, of course, anxiety about the changes and about the uncertain future. We can't know everything. And what I do know is that we can wade into the waters of the unknown together, listening to wisdom, acting with conviction, and continuing to change the world through love, compassion, and courage. I mean, honestly, if any congregation can do more than survive, but actually thrive in these times, it is Hancock Church. Now, I know a lot about not just surviving, but thriving in difficult times. If my faith were a metaphor, it would be the velveteen rabbit. My faith, if it were this tangible object, would certainly have a missing eye and perhaps a missing ear. It would have mediocre homemade stitching in places, and it would be covered in stains. But like the velveteen rabbit, it would be, and it is, real. Realness is therefore deeply important to me. Now, this takes the form, at least in my intention, of integrity, transparency, honesty, and courage. If you as the congregation decide that I am to be your next senior minister, then please know that I bring these core values into my leadership of our fine church. And I believe that with your deep gifts and graces and faith and mine and our deep bench of amazing staff, that there is nothing that we can't get through, that there's nothing we can't dream and do, and nothing to hold us back from loving each other into being all that we can and all that we are called to be. Friends, I look forward to talking with you more in person. Well, as in person as we can be right now. See you soon.